Yeah, that's a good string right there. I like it. I like it. What's going on, folks? I'm Automatic. And the reason why that's a good string, we're going to get into a little bit later. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of my my first initial impressions of the new character Menat from Street Fighter V. It's hard to be fair and skeptical. I mean, it's easy to like see a really cool combo in V-Trigger, and it looks really cool, right? It's really fun to do, but it's hard to gauge how effective that's going to be in the long term and like get a full scope of how the character is really going to function, right? How it's going to function. And off of a day one impression, I can just tell you that it's probably going to be more of a zoning character until maybe she gets her V-Trigger activation and we figure out how to use things on block, use things consciously, and just be able to convert off of random hits outside of setups. Setups will be very valuable, but I think it's going to be very hard to master using this V-Trigger on the fly without like a set play. So to just go over some of the pros that she has, I think her crush counter standing roundhouse is very good. I think it's quite good. And it'll be more used as a punish. This is just her standing roundhouse while she has the orb, so it's just clearly like a punishing move, like if Ibuki does an EX DP. So the reason why this is so good is because this causing a crush counter and then leading into the V skill, the low V skill itself, that will contribute even more to your V-Trigger. So I'll give you an idea. I'll put the gauge on normal. You can see that the crush counter gives me some V-Trigger, and then when I use the V-Skill, that gives me almost, I'd say around like 70% of that first bar. That's a lot. Considering she has a 2-bar V-Trigger, that's a lot of V-Trigger contribution. So it doesn't really end there, right? So you put them in a launch state, and then if you have the meter for, this is the medium punch and hard punch version of her, what is it, Soul Sphere, this causes a hard knockdown. This is a hard knockdown. And it's a long hard knockdown. Now, it doesn't give you enough time for a safe jump, unfortunately. But against Ibuki, if you jump at her, her EXDP will whiff, so she can't actually do that. Now, but a character like Guile, it has the angles to actually reach her. Guile, I haven't tested many other characters, to be honest, but you can, like, if the opponent doesn't have a reversal or that kind of thing to actually anti-air you, you can jump at them, because the jumping hard punch of Menat, she throws the orb, and you will always have the orb in this situation because you just use a move that requires you to have the orb and you bring it back to you. So if you jump immediately, you will have access to it. And yes, your normal does change if you don't have the orb. You have a less hitbox associated with this jumping hard punch. So since you're able to do this and hit them early in the air, if they do like a reversal 3-frame or something to anti-air, the orb will hit the meaty. And Guile's flash kick non-EX, you can actually stuff it with this button too. So yeah, all that branching off of this standing roundhouse to crush counter them to this, and then when you have the meter to spare, and the jumping hard punch, that's going to be really good. And there is some timing involved. It's not an easy thing to do, but yeah, standing roundhouse is, I think it's a really good crush counter if you have the meter to expand it into the EX, medium punch, and hard punch sphere, which gives you a hard knockdown. And your other alternatives are just to dash up and do a manual timing. If you dash up and do standing roundhouse in this situation, they can force a crouching state and make it whip. But this does hit with the meaty timing. I don't remember the specific active frame that it hits on. It's a little tough without the numbers available. But it seems that this won't hit crouching opponents in the later phases of its active frames. And of course you can just walk up or dash up and then throw them manually after that knockdown. So yeah, you have a lot of time when you knock them down with that move. So you have two moves that contribute towards your V-Trigger and then a hard knockdown. It's really good. I think this is really good. And I think there are other alternatives you can do too. I think you can do so maybe not. So there's more to come on that. That's, if you have the meter, really good knockdown. She has quite a bit in terms of anti-airs. There's a lot of things you can do while you have the orb and when you don't have the orb. When you hit crouching fierce, the orb extends. When you hit standing roundhouse, it also extends further into the air. And this will be something like, I don't know what incentive your opponent has to jump at you from a further range, but the standing roundhouse does offer a lot of range, and it does crush counter. So again, another contributing factor towards her V-Trigger. I think that you're going to see a common theme where if you generate like 2 hits of V-Trigger, you might be more inclined to use your V-Trigger in an offensive way, just to deplete the bar and begin building it again. I think you'll see that as a strategy later on down the road. So yeah, that standing roundhouse, it'll reach from quite a ways. Crouching hard punch, I think, no, I won't crush counter. Crouching hard punch will not crush counter unless you hit it in the first few active frames. So it's not going to work the same way as standing roundhouse. But you can use this as a closer angle to cover some of the jump as you could with the standing roundhouse. And this is going to be slower than the crouching hard punch as well. So those are your anti-airs with the orb that can crush counter. You also have, I would not recommend using standing jab. I would not recommend that at all. That's this is 5 frames, and it doesn't have like a upward hitbox to actually connect with it. So I don't recommend it at all. I think one of the more obvious ones would be her soul throw looking move, but you have to keep in mind that if you have the orb out, you cannot use it. It doesn't. It requires you to have access to this to actually do the anti-air. And I don't know, to be honest with you, how good this is compared to everything else. I'm not really sure what this is for, to be 100% honest with you. I mean, maybe we'll find some Okizemi setups later. Maybe it's used with the V-trigger to like travel and place orbs while you're in the air, that kind of thing. So more to come on that, I guess, because I just don't see, like, you can do it from a crouching position too, and that's okay. So I think it's not a bad anti-air. I think she just has better ones. And probably the more difficult anti-air to use is her crouching V-skill. Now, this will probably give you the most reward because it also contributes towards your V-trigger as it hits them. And you also get that hard knockdown, right, that we talked about earlier. So you should be able to combo into that. I think if they're high enough, you might be able to combo into yeah. So I guess you can save meter in that way. Yeah, that's probably where you use it, or like the more incentive you have. If you don't have EX meter, you can use that instead. And maybe there's something else you can use. But that would be the more challenging anti-air to use because it seems to be kind of slow. There's more timing involved. You have to really get the angle correct, and yeah, I think that's about it. If you do anti-air with this, and I'm not sure about this, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's better or worse when you have the orb, but if you have the orb out, you can't cancel it, and then the orb can potentially juggle them, right? And then you can then you can combo with whatever follow-up you feel necessary. I think, oh yeah, the slide. The slide as an anti-air, again, I think it is okay because you'll slide under their normals. We tested this against Balrog's jumping roundhouse. If you actually know it's against Guile's jumping roundhouse, this will slide under it. It'll almost avoid it. But again, it's like the same thing as if you have other anti-airs that might just be better, which is your crouching hard punch and maybe your standing roundhouse and V skill. Those will give you much more reward. But the slide itself does give you a reset opportunity, and it's possible to land behind them or in front of them. So, say for example, you don't have access to your orb. Now, your crouching hard punch, your standing roundhouse, and maybe your V skill are a little bit worse. So, you might want to do something that will benefit from you having your orb out, which might be the slide. So, if you do the slide, and then you do something like crouching hard punch, and then V skill, you can land on either side, and then you can determine which way that you landed, and then after you do this V skill, you can call back the orb. Now, when you do the V skill into the orb, you are safe on block. I think you're even on block, if I recall correctly. So that'll be an interesting thing as well. So you reset them with the slide, and then you'll hit crouching hard punch, V skill, and then call back the orb. And then if they block, you still have the orb on the way back, and they can't retaliate. They can't punish you for doing that. So yeah, I think with that in mind of her having good anti-airs, I think it becomes more and more clear that she's geared towards being a zoning character, maybe until she has V-trigger. So yeah, let's see her sweep. Her sweep does have quite a bit of range, a lot of range, and it's pretty fast when you have the orb out. I think it's 8 or 9. I think it's 9 startup. So it has less range when you don't have the orb out, but you can also cancel it. So you have to be really careful. I think this is a really important tool for Menat, but I think you also have to be really conscious of how you're setting it up and how you're placing your crouching roundhouse. So I think this is going to be really good. So just to give you an idea of how it looks. So if they're that far away, we'll even make her do a standing jab so you can see what can happen here. If I'm too close, I don't remember if this is safe or not. No, it's unsafe to do this up close. But if you're far away and the orb is on the way, it will hit them, and they'll be. I don't know exactly how negative this is, but I think it's going to be challenging to actually punish it, especially from a distance. So I think this would be a really important tool. Really important tool. And this is also really important to know is that when you call the orb back, at worst, so that means when the orb hits immediately, or if it's blocked immediately, from this position here, at worst, it's +3. +3 on block. I think that's really, really important. So, for example, say that unsafe sweep, right? If I do it up close and then cancel, it's now advantageous. So now it's +3 instead. So because I'm canceling it into the orb. So this is always going to be, if you cancel any normal into this, it's always going to be +3, no matter what it is, I think. I'm pretty sure, because you're canceling it into a new animation, so it gives you a universal recovery, right? So no matter what I do, well, as long as the orb hits, wow. As long as the orb hits, I should be +3. Yeah, that sounds about right to me. So the further away they are from the orb, the more advantage you're gonna have. But perhaps the more vulnerable you're gonna be. So if I do this right here, I'm stuck in a recovery animation. But it actually it gets back to you pretty quickly. So I mean, it might be okay. Might be okay. Now keep in mind, if you are hit while the orb is on its way back to you, it nullifies the hitting property of that orb. So it becomes irrelevant. It just travels back to you. So for example, if I do something unsafe, such as that standing jab into the animation, I got hit, now the orb doesn't hit her. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you want to investigate normals, if the orb is that far away, you want to investigate normals that are going to keep you safe on block, such as crouching hard punch and the V skill. That way, she can't retaliate, and you still have an orb on the way back to you. So you would use V skill and then call it back. I'm safe on block. I think that's even, actually. But the orb is still able to come back to me because I'm safe, because there's no retaliation. Now, I don't want to attack during that phase. I want to wait for the orb to come back to me. So that's where it's going to be a little bit, there's going to be a lot to dissect for the matchup for your opponent to see how they deal with that orb coming on the way back. So we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, that's one of the pros. Her sweep is good. It's so easy to get sidetracked with this character. There's so many things to learn. So yeah, her sweep is really good. Sweep is really good. You'll see a lot of that. Yeah, this is a really good idea too. This is her light punch and medium punch soul sphere. On block, it is +3. Now that's, well, you know, on +3 you have throw Okizemi, right? Throw Okizemi, they can't jab you out of it. So if I'm close enough, I can actually throw her out of her jab. Now this isn't really that good, right? Because it requires you to do a move that's really slow, really close to your opponent. And then if I do crouching fierce into this, it's gonna push them too far away. If they block both of them, we'll talk about what just happened next. And again, I think this is a really, really, really good string for her. Crouching fierce into light punch and medium punch EX sphere. I think it's really, really good. Now, from here, I can't throw her, as I was talking about earlier. But now I have a non-sphere crouching medium punch. And since this is +3, my crouching medium punch in that phase is 6 frames. So that's a 3-frame window. If they do a 3-frame in between this, my crouching medium punch is going to hit them. If they block, then I have advantage from the orb coming back to me. Now, this part right here is where it gets a little foggy, because then you have to manually time things. You're not in range of a throw. It's going to be hard to determine precisely how much frame advantage you have here, because the orb has a bit of a travel time to it. But we know from earlier that when it hits on the first frame of it being active on the return, you're +3. So this has to be +3 or more, probably more. So from this position here, you have to be, I'm going to say you're more than +3. A lot, probably the 4, 5, 6, maybe, I don't know, probably 4, 5. I'm guessing here. But this is a really good string, really good string. Crouching hard punch into this. Now, if it hits them, you saw earlier that it's just a combo. It's just a combo if it hits, which is okay, because off of this you get what, crouching medium punch into the up B skill, and that's okay. Not bad. Pretty good. Gives you distance. You won't get knocked down Okizemi off of this. Yep. Yep, and your dash is 20 frames, which is what we're going to talk about in the cons next. And if you're crouching hard punch crush counters, you kind of waste the EX meter a little bit, but you can still follow up. I think you had to follow up with crouching medium punch, right? Was it crouching medium punch? I don't really remember. You have crouching medium punch and then you can call it back from here. But there's some crush counter combos we can talk about later with the crouching hard punch itself, right? Something like this. It varies depending on which sphere you throw out. So yeah, to sum up her pros, it will be mostly her ability to zone and have advantage from like a mid-range. You're gonna have to find the sweet spot where you can continuously pressure with the sphere, with this crouching fierce and EX. You're gonna find things like this might be useful. Her ability to anti-air, I think, is gonna be pretty valuable in keeping people out. You don't want to be in the corner with Menat and not have an orb. This right here, you're totally vulnerable. This is going to be so bad. So you're going to want to use her tools to zone to keep yourself in a good position, which I think she does have a strength in. Yeah, sweep, standing hard punch, crush counter. These are all going to be good tools for her. And yeah, I think that about sums it up for her pros. I'm sure there's a lot of things to discover as well. So we're going to talk about her cons. Her dash is quite slow. This is a 20 frame dash. The fastest dashes in the game are 16, so that's a 4 frame difference. You might think that's not a big deal, but it also contributes to more things than just the speed of it. So for example, say her crouching roundhouse was, well, it's just the knockdowns, right? If you could knock them down and then dash up and have advantage, then she would have also that attribute. She would be able to have like throw, Kizemi, and actually I don't think I went over standing jab, right? That's a good throw, Oki, but this is also 5 frames, so it's gonna be tough. So you wouldn't be able to do that because, well, you're not able to do it because of her, not necessarily because of her slow dash, but it also contributes to her knockdowns, why you can't really catch up to your opponent and then have frame advantage in many of the knockdown situations. So yeah, her dash is quite slow, and obviously it's going to contribute towards her movement to it, just a little bit. But I also don't think she has to move towards her opponent very much. Oh, I guess I didn't really mention that this can reflect projectiles. That seems a little bit obvious, so that would be a pro as well. And actually, it's easier to reflect projectiles while you have the orb. It's a little bit smaller with this. Okay, so her other con is a low hit conversion rate. What I mean by that is there's not a whole lot you can do in terms of hit confirms and meaningful damage, and then you have a knockdown, and then you have Okizemi. There's not, to me, it seems like there's not a whole lot about this character with that, and that seems like what is the most powerful strength of what we perceive as the top characters in this game. They're able to have an invincible reversal, which is another thing that she doesn't have. And they have a 3 frame that they can convert off of. They have an invincible reversal that they can not just kill momentum, but reverse the amount I have to make my opponent guess. Like Kuma does an EXDP, he stops your momentum, cancels in the V trigger, and puts you in a 50-50. That is ridiculous. She has nothing. As far as I can see, she doesn't have an invincible reversal, so she can't do that, period. But then to put you in a situation that totally flips what your opponent wants to do to you, I think she's going to be fighting against that the whole time. She's going to be trying to keep your opponent out until she gets her to this position here, where she can really make things happen. So yeah, that's gonna. It also affects her just ability to convert into damage. Period. I mean, yeah, like a lot of her hit confirms off of light attacks, it's just gonna look like that, and that's it. It's just gonna be a method of keeping them at a distance. So yeah, if you are trying to play the normal and back recovery guessing game and reversal something, you're not gonna get a lot of reward off of it. As far as I can see at the moment, maybe at some point we'll find something really good with crouching short activate, or excuse me, standing short, and maybe crouching short is good too. So that's gonna be really important. It's going to be quite a bit of a struggle. It's going to be an uphill battle, especially if you're trying to learn this character and you're playing online and you're playing against people who are well experienced in being offensive and forcing you to guess. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. I can tell you that. It's not going to be a pleasant experience right now when you're learning the character, and then when you actually know how to play the character, it's still going to have the same faults. Being forced into a guessing position. I'm telling you, if you don't have your orb, and even if you do have your orb and you're in the corner, it's gonna be bad news. It's gonna be bad news bears because even your V reversal is punishable. You can throw her out of her V reversal, and you can punish her after the V reversal ends. So she has like a teleport V reversal. It's not very good at all. I don't see it. I think it's probably worse than Colleen's. I think it's worse than Colleen's. Colleen's is pretty bad. So yeah, it's gonna really be really tough to defend yourself with this character once your opponent is on top of you. And I think she has 950 health, 950 stun, so that's 50 health. That's also gonna be missing from that already tough to deal with guessing game that this game often imposes on you. So yeah, with that in mind, her comeback factor in itself is questionable right now. It's at least very hard to execute, if it exists. That's gonna be what's gonna be. That's also what's going to be hard to determine. Also, it's going to be the execution barrier itself, because first you have to develop it, and then you have to actually do it, and do it in a pressure situation. So there's a lot of things in this game where you can mash. You can mash, it's easy to time, but for her, she has to specifically time her negative edge setups, and then she has to use it in a way defensively or like in a zoning sense that can benefit her on the fly, and you have to find really unique ways to do that, because it's based off of negative edge, and if you want negative edge, you have to hit the button, period. So you have to find really clever ways to hold a charge when you need it, or to just know how to identify which one's necessary. And you have to just identify which one is better to use, right? And that's going to take a lot of processing in itself. Not just to process the data, but how to like actually do it. So yeah, the learning curve is going to be a con for her. And with that in mind, once you're able to do stuff like that, her overhead is one of the, well, we'll just put it this way. Colleen's overhead is 23 frames, and that's pretty easy to see. Her overhead is 4 frames slower. Now, you can cancel it. You can cancel it if you have the sphere already out. So in that way, it's okay. I think it's alright. You can have advantage there. But I don't see the overhead being used. I don't see it being successfully blocked, or excuse me, successfully hitting your opponent. I think your opponent's gonna be more successful blocking it, but I think that's how they balance it in a sense, is that now you have advantage after the sphere comes back. And this does have a little bit of range on it, as opposed to like something you would use a sweep as well, so there's kind of an idea there. Your opponent is forced to be blocking low and paying attention to the overhead, so that might make them more susceptible Theo Huxtable to the throw. There'll be more Theo Huxtable to the throw in this situation. Right? Because they can be looking for a high-low, and then you can throw. So yeah, her throw is really slow. That's the con there. So yeah, to wrap it up, her pros, good crush counter roundhouse. She has a variety of anti-airs. Her sweep has good range. She's generally good at zoning, I think. I think people are going to also be jumping at her a lot, which will mean that you will be more inclined to get like crush counter roundhouse time as well, that kind of thing. And this is +3 on block. This is +3 on block. And you're going to find a lot of things here in the sweet spot, where this is kind of the general idea. Something like that. The cons, her movement is restricted. Dashing is 20 frames. Pretty slow. She has a low hit conversion rate. You're not going to see a lot of crazy hit confirms. Actually, you kind of will with the zoning portion. If you can hit confirm off of the ball here and then maybe standing roundhouse from here, standing roundhouse, or crouching hard punch, I think will be really good. If you can confirm the ball actually hitting and then going into the V skill. Preferably the crouching V skill would be better. I think in that way, those will be hit confirms. But what I really aim to say with the con of having low hit conversion is the light attacks. That's really it. Standing short into crouching jab and then V skill. So I think that's a con. There's not really a whole lot you're getting off of that. Besides resetting the situation, giving yourself some space, that kind of thing. And with that in mind, the Okizeme, I think you might find like 1 or 2 knockdowns where the Okizeme is great. But the more frequent things that happen, such as hit confirming off of that V skill, you don't really have much off of it. There's not going to be like throw Oki. And her throw as well is not really much you can do off of it, except give yourself more space. Yep, and the standing short is 3 frames, but again, not much a lot. There's not a lot of converting available from it. Maybe when we do V trigger off of it, we'll find some good stuff. But other than that, just raw, vanilla, neutral, and well, not really neutral, but close range to your opponent. See, that's not really her strong point. And to wrap it up, we got a computer with the sleep state. Long video. Her overhead is pretty slow, and her comeback factor not so good. So that's it for day one. I know it's a lot of information. I'm sure I didn't cover everything that could possibly be covered. But I hope you learned something. Twitch.tv/Automatic. I'll be streaming quite a bit today. And that's it for now. I'm Automatic.